Today I wanted to get on and open a dialogue conversation around finance and the new structures that are being created around this and how we navigate that and what it looks like through initiation. And so I've just arrived at my new favorite little sanctuary space near where I'm living at the moment, and I wanted to share some of it with you as I walk to the mother tree that likes to hold these containers for me. So this is a beautiful little space. There's several of these little spaces along. These flowers smell incredible, by the way. But here in Dallas, there are several of these little spaces where they have these rec centers, and they do these games, these baseball games or soccer games on the weekends, and then they'll have these beautiful little sanctuaries around, these beautiful little nature centers. This one, I think the trail is a mile-long loop, and it's just this land that has been here for hundreds of years. It actually used to be homestead land for a family that settled out here. They would use all of the wood here to heat their home and build their home, and it's never been used for any other purpose. It's all natural. It's all they don't cultivate it at all. When a tree falls or whatever happens naturally, they just let it happen. So it's got a beautiful natural habitat here, and they just groom the trails. And there's a lot of poison ivy out here too. So I've had to be careful as I come out here to record my videos of where I sit, but it's just gorgeous. And so the mother tree that continues to call to me currently to record these videos is here. This is her. And it's interesting because she is right here on this little boggy space, and of course I'm in this space of initiation right now where there's so much of this bogginess, right? The mud, and then there's also all of this green and gold too, and there's all of these different, there's so much nourishment, and there's compost, and there's all these different things. So this is a little space that I enjoy sitting and creating this content for you guys. So and whenever I come, today I have my vervain tea, and so I always just share a little bit of it. And I usually will leave some of my either some of my hair or something to thank the mother for holding this space and for creating this beautiful container and welcoming into this space, holding through this journey. So this space is really lovely. I get to hear the birds, I get to hear the children playing and the cheers, and it's really joyful. And of course we are still in the city, so I hear the planes overhead, not trains overhead. I don't have any nearby trains, but yeah, I hear the airplanes overhead going to the airport, and there's a lot of weaving of different levels of reality in this space, and I really enjoy it. So in fact, for my last podcast, there were a couple of owls that visited me that called me to this space to hold this container in this space. And I've wandered around a few other places, and this is the one. So yeah, today I wanted to open a conversation around finance, around money. And I don't have it all figured out. I am in deep initiation in this space. And yet the way that I move through my layers at the depth that I'm currently moving through them, it's in an embodied way where I have this gift of being able to feel into the layers invite them in, and then alchemize them and pull the gold from them and pull the wisdom from them. And I also have this gift of seeing these patterns and structures, these templates. And so I wanted to bring some of that to the table today so that we can open this conversation, because what I sense is that right now there is this restructuring that is happening, of course, in the entire world. And part of that is around our financial structure, which is part of the resource that we need, that we're reclaiming in order to sort of build this new vision that some of us are feeling, whispering, calling to us, that is replacing the structures that are currently breaking down. And as the financial structures shift, we're all being called to navigate our financial story in a new way, in a way that we haven't had modeled for us before. And that requires us being really deeply present with our own processes, because each of us has our own story and space and gifts, even with finance, and our own way of navigating it. And so, yeah, I wanted to explore some of what I have discovered, what's been sort of revealed to me in this space, and bring it to you and open this dialogue and allow you to bring some of this into your body, to feel into it and see what resonates and see how it might help you in navigating your path with finance. And so, when we're talking about money, let's see where to begin. I mean, the first thing is we've got these stories, right? On one hand, we've got stories about having to work hard, about where we spend our money and when and how, and the kind of life that we're allowed to live based on the amount of money that we're making, right? And what we're allowed to feel about ourselves, whether or not we're allowed to feel that we're thriving, or how that sense of thriving occurs as a result of the money, right? And I feel like the space that we're being called into right now is really around taking our power back and learning how to anchor and restructure our own selves in this space. And so there are a few layers that I want to look at this, a few lenses that I want to look at this through today. And one of those is those permissions and what we allow ourselves to have and when, what our priorities are. Another lens is going to be just what is our personal design. Some of us need more structure, some of us need more flow, and we need to find that balance within ourselves. But then there's this underlying space of our own internal structure that all of us must cultivate, our own container that all of us must cultivate, and our own internal anchoring into our inner authority. And good morning.
Morning.
And so we've got a few visitors walking through the trails today. And so, yeah, when we feel into, and then I want to, and I want to talk a little bit practically about working with those layers, those internal layers of structure, and what that looks like in the 3D world. And so, yeah, when we're talking about the ideals that we have with money currently, there are certain structures that we've been brought up implementing in our lives around finance. There are certain expectations that we have currently around how we manage that, how we navigate that, and those still differ amongst individuals. I've never been somebody, as I was sharing in my past podcasts, I've never been somebody that has worked for money. In a lot of ways, I've always felt that my money works for me, not the other way around. But there are plenty of people who have a story that we have to work hard for money. And I have to say that there's been so much value in my exploration of human design and gene keys, because and also through the support of my own mentors who have been holding me in my own initiation financially and the wisdom that they've shared around finance. But one of the biggest things that I have taken as my belief that resonates in my body is that money doesn't care how hard we work for it. It doesn't come to us only if we work hard. And that actually money this frequency of money flows most easily to us when we are in our space of allowing ourselves to be turned on or nourished or excited or celebratory. Like, we all have our own different flavors of how we work with money, but that is how we're actually in our most magnetic, most attractive space for this resource, right? And the other thing is, and there's a lot of this talk kind of going around that's gotten pretty mainstream about how it's not scarce, right? It is an energy, and it is like air, right? Or sunlight. It is there, and at this point, it's more obvious than ever. It's just numbers in a system, right? It is not even really this tangible thing anymore, right? It really is so deeply energetic. And it truly is, I believe, a relationship. I believe that we are in relationship with everything in our world, and that our ability to receive plays a huge, not only the stories that we have about money and where we feel that we can trust it, but where we are able to receive. And so much of this, I've explored some of this before in other podcasts, but so much of this comes down to our templating with how we were nourished as children by our relationships with our parents, and by relationships with resources as children, right? And that goes back, into templating that is at a cellular level as well, that has been passed down through generations. So there's this, there's this aspect of it, right? And as so many of us right now are being called to step into new stories around money, new stories around our life and how we live it, and new levels of reclamation of ourselves and of who we are in the world and what we're bringing into the world. And what I sense is that we're stepping back into this origin essence of our soul. We are stepping back into our origin templates. We are beginning to allow the shadows to show us where our magic is, right? And we're learning how to navigate that. And our deepest desire and what we're being called into is to create a world that has been birthed through this externalized essence of our soul expression. Really bringing our soul expression into the 3D world around us. And as we do that, we step into our gifts that really complement one another and help to build this beautiful web of a new system and a new way of being, right? Together, that supports the light and the shadow in all aspects of being human, while we are working through this space of expressing ourselves as our gifts, as our magic, and seeing ourselves through this lens of being in this empowered space and sharing our natural innate value and gifts with the world and stepping into our prosperity as a result of that, right? So as we are navigating this, we each have a different design, and this is something that we can explore through human design. But if you've ever done one of those mastermind courses or something where it's I achieved this financial success, and this is how you can do it too. Just do this thing and do that thing, and maybe work with these levels of templating, but it'll work for you. And it doesn't. It'll work for some people, right? It will work for some people, but it's not going to work for everyone. Why? Well, because we're all here to work through it differently, and we're all here to hold finance differently. So for example, if you look at your human design, you will see, and we all have certain gifts and certain, relationships that we have with money and spaces. Some of us are here, if you look at your gene keys, Pearl, some of us are here to be celebrated by money. Some of us are here to make huge change with money. Some of us are here to work in charity. There are different aspects that we all have with money in different ways that these resources flow. And it actually is like what feels most fulfilling to us internally with money is what we are here to do with money. And we are meant to have all of those resources for it, right? But there's also this aspect of how do we manage our money, right? And how do we step into this? And what is our guide in that? And we can see that through human design. And so when you look at human design at your profile, there are 4 arrows. And, all of this is around how are we structuring this? How are we managing it? How are we cultivating our internal structures? What are our templates? What is our flow energetically, right? This is all Saturn stuff. Saturn stepping into the Pisces space right now, where we're all being called to work with these intangible things, these energetic things, right? And figure out how are we bringing structure to them, right? And so we all do this in actually different ways. So when you look at your human design, there are these 4 arrows. And I can't remember off the top of my head what all of them mean, but I know that for me, I've got 3 arrows facing right, and the only arrow that faces left, and that's all flow. When they're facing right, which feels a little backwards, but I think we're kind of looking at our chart as if we're facing ourselves. So when they're facing right, it's actually toward our left side, right? But that means it's all flow, except I have one little left facing arrow that's around results. So that's what I focus on. And for me, the flavor of results is based on my own internal. So I am an emotional authority that also has a defined sacral. So I'm here to be turned on, I'm here to follow my desires, and I'm here to navigate these through a lens of my emotional authority, right? And as a Mani-Gen, my measure of success is through satisfaction versus frustration, right? So these are my temperature gauges. So for me, if I spend money somewhere and then I regret it, right? I can go back and say, was I in my authority? Did I navigate my emotional curve first with big purchases? I can go back and say, okay, I'm feeling frustrated. Like, what is that, right? So I go based on results. If I try to set myself into a rigid budget or something like that, it does not work for me. It doesn't feel good. It feels constricting. This is not how I operate with money. I operate in flow, and I am most in my power, and I actually manage this resource best when I step into my gift of depth of feeling. And so this is how I navigate it. For my mom, she also has the same 3 right-facing arrows and the same left-facing result arrow. And the only thing that she's here to create that sort of masculine structure in is based on her results. And for her, though, she's a projector. She's a splenic projector. And so she is here to feel into what feels nourishing, what supports her health, her mental well-being, what supports her well-being at every level. And her kind of temperature gauge is success. Does she feel successful, or does she feel bitter about it? If she feels bitter about where she's spending her money, then something is out of alignment, right? And so there are very specific ways that we are here to explore and navigate money, right? My oldest daughter, for example, is a quad left, which means she is all structure. Budgets will feel good to her. They will help her feel contained and guided rather than restricted. She is also a projector, but she is an emotional authority projector, right? So she will be here to notice what makes her feel successful and where does she feel bitter. And this is not just in money. This is in her general navigation. This is how we generally navigate life in our power and authority, right? And noticing where is she allowing herself to navigate her emotional wave when she's making big decisions with money, right? So, each of us is here to explore this in a different way, right? Each of us is here to actually even manage our finances in different ways. And my financial story and what I'm called into an initiation is going to be different for someone else. And so as we're being initiated in this space, one thing that we can expect is to be put in situations where we are giving our power away, where we experience the bitterness, the anger, the frustration, whatever it is that shows us that we're not in alignment with our finances. And as we navigate that, it's our job to learn how to bring that into our body, allow that to reflect to us where this distorted templating has created the current experience that we have, right? And so for me in this process, and what I do with the people that I work with, is bring that into the body. Notice where it's being felt in the body. Notice, okay, I'm feeling so fucking frustrated, or I'm feeling so bitter right now. And then where do you feel it in your body? Notice where it lives. Describe the sensation. And we do this from a space of feeling grounded and safe and anchored. If it ever becomes overwhelming, you have to take a step back, right? But we navigate this. We court this sensation, this emotion, and we begin to create space for it to unravel, to tell us its story, to show us the templating that underlies it. And there's so many levels to this. I have been taken back to the nourishment that I received from my mother, from being able to trust that there will be a response, from being able to trust in the integrity of, the universe or the people around me. There have been so many stories, so much templating, and the space where we haven't been met as, women in this space in my family for generations. Like there's been so much. And as mothers not being able to provide for their children, there have been so many layers that I have navigated around this space. And then what about the receptivity, right? Are you able to receive? Because there's this aspect of unraveling the stories and the templating when it comes to how do you spend, or what do you expect, or what do you believe to be true? And then there's also this, can you open your heart? Because there's that root center, right, of like safety. Where are you scared? Where are you like feeling unsupported? Where do you feel like you can't find your ground, or you're out of control, or whatever it is, right? But then there's that heart center space of, can you open to receive? Where does your heart feel starved for this nourishment? Where does your heart feel as though it has been struggling to receive this nourishment your whole life? And how can you open to that? How can you open to that trust? Where can you... And this is all about that alchemy. This is another one of my gifts. It's that going inwards, feeling these layers, nourishing them, meeting them, and then extracting the gold, alchemizing this into gold, allowing that sort of experience that's being reflected of your disempowerment, where you're in the shadow expression of your gifts when you're looking at your gene keys, and allowing that to show you where is your magic. Where are you being called into your magic? And for me, money has been a huge one, because I have, from my 7 to 21 age range in my Venus sequence, I have gate 21, which is the resource manager, and my life's work is gate 55, which is the spirit of abundance, and my south node, one of my south nodes, is gate 14, which is alchemizing these things into gold. And my, both my 0 to 7 age range and my culture and my pearl sequence are both gate 38, which is like navigating the struggle and honoring the struggle, right? Like there's so much here where I've been in this struggle with finance, and I've navigated it at all of these levels of returning it to that origin point of templating, right? Which is my vocation and my pearl I've got lots of doubles, lots of powerful energy around returning us to our origin templating and honoring that struggle and managing the resources around us while we do that. Like, these are my big, big gifts, right? And a huge aspect of that is money and this huge karmic cycle that I've been in, but this is also a huge karmic re-templating that we are going through as a collective right now, right? And it's funny because even the sharing of my wisdom in this space, like I actually attempted to record this podcast twice before this. And this actually, I can't recall this having happened before where I recorded a podcast. And this has been on my heart to record for a while, but I had been waiting for my voice to return. And it's not 100%. It's still a little, I can feel a little bit that's still weaving here in my voice as I reclaim and step more into my enchantress energy. But I recorded this podcast twice in the past week, and each time I was like, no, it's not gelled yet. Okay, I'm going to keep waiting, and more continued to reveal itself to me in this space around the structure of it. And as I dropped into clarity of it, then the imposter syndrome came up. And, we navigate these layers, we navigate all of these layers as we go deeper and step more into our power. And so, even before I came today, I had to hold space for, it started last night. I started to unravel it, where I could sense that I was identifying from a maiden, uninitiated aspect, where it's like, I'm still in this. I'm still an initiate in this, right? And the layers that I followed in were, who am I to talk about this right now because I haven't figured it out, right? Isn't that funny? I haven't figured it out. Like, nobody has it figured out, right? But the mind will do this to us, right? And there was a space in my body that just felt like, gosh, am I really allowed to share my wisdom? Is my wisdom really valuable in this space? Even though I have people calling to me like, please share your experience, right? Please share. And as I navigated it, I realized that, when we are stepping into our power and our magic and our North Node energy, our soul mission, and through another lens, for me, I'm exploring it through this enchantress energy. And it's all the same thing. We're being called into this impeccability in our container to hold what we're here to hold in this moment. And that will continue to evolve, right? But we're being called to work on these structures, on this foundational aspect. It's sort of like, in tarot, when you want to step into a new story, everything gets destroyed. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? And so the physical representation of what has been created with that energy has to crumble. The tower crumbles, and it's happening for you, not to you. And you have the opportunity to work then to restructure that foundation. You can either grasp at what was and stay in fear, stay in this like discombobulated, space of like fear and loss of control and disempowerment, or you can work at this alchemizing level to re-template and take the gold from these experiences to weave a new future, right? And that's like retiling the well, right? That was what my first mentor called it, retiling the well. We tend to cultivate the foundations, and then we retile over that and we face what we're building afterwards, right? And, for me, it's like, yes, I'm working through cultivating this diamond structure of my womb, right? I've been weaving at every level to claim that gold, right? And I'm stepping into this North Node energy. I'm stepping into my power, and I'm beginning to weave my 3D from that. But there was this part of me that was like, well, the 3D hasn't arrived yet. So is the wisdom accurate, right? Because I don't have the proof in the 3D yet, right? And I think that's why I'm being called to share this right now, before it's arrived in the 3D. Because where I'm at from having navigated my financial situation in the ways that work for me, based on my strategy, my authority, I feel so deeply satisfied, so proud of myself for the depths that I've worked through this. I don't feel like I've let anything slip me by that was meant to reach me in this cycle. I don't feel like there is any space where I'm feeling disempowered. I don't feel frustrated in any space right now. I feel empowered. I feel excited for what's to come. I feel excited about what I'm building. I feel excited about the nourishment that is around me, that is here for me, the resources that are around me that are here for me. And when you can emanate this from a template level, this is the foundation, and I touched on this in my last podcast too, and I've touched on it a few times, but this is the foundational level of what Abraham Hicks is talking about. This is kind of like, this is a lot of people who've worked with Abraham Hicks and manifestation and the law of attraction, and this is the most powerful space of co-creation. When you are emanating it from this space at your cellular being, when you are so rooted and rested into it, and you are so open and ready to receive it. And then you give yourself from that space permission to live it. You give yourself permission to bring this internal aspect of what is true for you, what you feel in your soul, in your cells. And you bring it out into the world. You begin weaving it into the world around you. See, I made the mistake in the past through the guidance of some of these like financial, to bring the thing in, just live as if, right? So I had money come in and then I would spend it as if I was in this space of abundance and thriving. But my internal story and templating wasn't aligned with that. And so what happened? Well, I just ended up blowing the money on these things, and then the cycle came back through, right? And that's what'll happen if we try to overlay. And eventually you will create shifts if you continue to overlay, if you continue to revisit these things and overlay and overlay and overlay. Eventually you'll kind of like bring slowly your nervous system and that truth into alignment. But to me, that's a lot of struggle that's unnecessary, because I'm here as a management to find efficiency in things, right? So what I've found is that if we work at this template level, if we allow ourselves to work at this level that brings mind, body, soul, energetic and emotional world into the 3D world, it's incredibly powerful. And it doesn't feel like a struggle. There's no overlaying, there's no band-aid, because you simply are living as that thing, right? Like it just comes from you, it emanates, this is the gift frequency of my gate 41. And so so what does that look like, right? What does it look like to re-template, to go inwards, re-template these things, and then live that, right? For me, what it has looked like is tending to those areas where I feel the fear, where I feel out of alignment, where I feel frustrated, alchemizing them to step back into my power, to allow that to guide my steps. And the biggest thing is when you're in fear, you're worried about the future, or you're feeling frustrated about the past, right? It's dropping. When you re-alchemize, you drop deeply into the present moment, and it doesn't matter if you can see the step ahead of you. You are in full trust that you are supported, and you take that step, knowing that you will feel that full body yes, knowing that you will be drawn into those next steps and supported into those next steps, because you are always being drawn into your power, even if that means showing you where you're out of your power first, right? And so trusting that process, for me, it has been a huge initiation in being in the present moment. Trusting what I'm weaving into the future from this present moment after having visited the past. Trusting the foundations that I'm creating in the present moment, that I'm retiling the well with, after having learned from that templating from the past, right? And as I live that from this space, because again, you guys, I'm still in this space where I have a limited consistent income, and it's not enough to pay for a roof over my head. I have a safe roof over my head while I navigate this, but I don't have enough financial resource in my 3D reality at this moment in time to pay for a house over my head, a roof over my head, right? The gift in this has been that as all of these things have broken down that I was paying for, I have been able to, and they created debts. Like I've got debts right now as well as a result of this. But navigating it through this space, and I've had to go back several times as next steps have happened that are pushing me toward this, that didn't necessarily feel good as things were being broken down, where I was like, fuck, did I make the right decision? Should I have done that this way? And I've had to go back and revisit those decisions to make sure, was I truly in my power? What is being reflected to me here? It's been a process, that sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, allowing myself to really be present with each step of this process, and allowing myself to, and for me, it's been a sort of extreme experience with money, because my foundational experience with money and this resource has always been that we barely had enough to get by. We were barely surviving, and I am moving into a new story of thriving. And I believe that we're all being called into this new story of thriving, and that we're no longer here to just survive. And so for me, in order for me as my 3 line to excuse me, as my 3 line to live this in an embodied way and experience this in an embodied way, I have to live the thing, right? And then also, my emotional authority means that my layers are triggered to me by experiencing it emotionally, right? So my reflection happens from the emotional experience. And so for me, I had to be taken into where all of this stuff was unraveling to such a level that it created an emotional response to create pressure in my root center for this new exploration, for this retemplating, right? And so that's meant taking things down to a level where I felt in my own self, oh my God, I'm not even able to support my children. I can't be reliable for my children financially. And that took me into a huge layer of templating around where that has been true for every woman in my family for generations. Right? To work at the template level with that. And I mean, there have been so many layers with this, so many layers that I've held with this, and that's one of them. But then it comes to priorities. How are you spending your money? How are you prioritizing your money? Because what feels true to me is that when we live our life from our priorities and values, that is how we build the life that we truly want. Because our life is always going to reflect the values and priorities that we are taking action on, that we are giving ourselves permission to live from. And so for me, in this process, what I've naturally been guided to, and what, there was a bee, a wasp. There is this experience of, I'm here to thrive, and through my particular North Node, I'm here to do that, living through my senses. And my particular experience of thriving is about how it feels in my body. My gift is in feeling, and I've got this emotional authority, right? And so for me, it's those things, when I start externalizing this in the 3D world and allowing myself to live this after working with this templating, it's about allowing myself to thrive in how I feel at a sensual level through my nervous system, what allows me to be open and soft, what environments feel good to me, what turns me on, what is a full body yes that my body surrenders to. How do I open my body? How do I nourish my body? How do I bring it to this space of vitality and creativity? And this will be a little bit different for each person, right? But for me, it means getting creative with my resources and working with these relationships that I've cultivated to have experiences. I've got because of the relationships that I've cultivated, I can have, a beautiful dinner gifted to me at a wine bar with amazing wine. I can have comedy tickets and a speakeasy gifted to me, where I get to just go and enjoy these amazing atmospheres and go and have fun. And then I can choose to spend a small amount at that space or not, depending on where I'm at in that moment financially. And I'm living moment to moment in the present moment financially. When it comes to how I spend, if I am feeling like I have a little bit of abundance, like I've got a little bit to spend, I allow myself to nourish those around me with that in ways that feel good to me, in ways that feel satisfactory to me, right? Ways that feel good. And when I do that, I never come back feeling frustrated by where I spent my money, by where it's been channeled. I believe that money wants us to spend it in ways that nourish us and those around us. It wants us to have fun. It wants us to celebrate it. It wants us to, and we each have our own energy with this. But for me, my pearl and the way that I'm here to experience money is as a one line. And for me, that at a very simple level is simplicity. But for me, that's simply living as my expression, right? And so that's simply nourishing my senses. It doesn't mean that it has to be basal, right? It's simply sharing that abundance with others in ways that feel good to me. It's simply bringing these experiences into our lives. As a 3-line, I'm here to have adventure and experience, right? And it's managing my resources in such a way that allow me to do that in ways that feel good, right? And if ever I do something, and there have been, actually, I'm very proud of myself. There's only been 2 aspects where I've done this over the past several months where I was like, And it allowed me to go back and see templating where, in one aspect, I hadn't followed my emotional authority with it. I hadn't allowed myself the time. I felt pressured into it, and I made an on-the-spot choice that I later regretted. And then another aspect was where I kind of had felt, I probably shouldn't go and do this, but you know what, it'll be fun, and let's just go out and let's do this. But then I was there, and I still could have made the choice not to spend as much as I did financially, but I spent more than I desired to financially because I let that structure of impeccability sort of fall. I could feel where actually I should have made a different choice, but I just kind of let it go. It became watery, and I didn't. And then I came back, okay, but I learned from those 2 experiences where that impeccability failed to create the result that it created, right? And I was able to weave with that layer of where was I coming from in that space? Where had I not met myself previous to that and created the space for me previous to that to be able to honor what I was feeling intuitively, right? And so, for me, I always look at things through a lens of trial and error. There is no failure, right? And that's a gift of the 3-line, is when we make a mistake or a misstep, we get to review it and learn from it. We get to retrieve the wisdom from it. And that's what determines success or failure, right? And so, yeah. I think that the foundational thing here that I sense when it comes to navigating our money story and reclaiming it for ourselves is this understanding, one, that we're all here to do and experience that differently, number 1, and to give each other that freedom. Number 2, to get really clear on or intentional on beginning to navigate this, learning to understand how are you here to navigate, what is your way of navigating this, and starting to explore what it looks like when you're in your power, how to work at these template levels, right? And how to navigate that through that internal guidance system that you have. Because, my process and my experience and my internal guidance system isn't going to be the same as everyone else's. It's only going to look the same or very similar for someone who is also an emotional management, who happens to be a 3-line, who also happens to be, did I say emotional authority, right? Like, that person will experience this very similar to me, right? Especially if they have similar templating financially. But if you're a 2-line, for example, your reflection comes from people around you. And if you're all left-sided arrows, you're going to desire more structure in this space. You're going to want to look at results, and you're going to want to look at the structure in the process. And you're going to, there's less flow there. There's more structure that feels good. And, each person, has this different pearl where they experience money when they're stepping into their power. They are here to experience money differently, and they're here to channel it differently, right? So one last thing that I wanted to touch on is, what about when we have these debts, right? What can we allow ourselves permission to do when we're in the midst of this and we've created some debts and we're in the middle of initiation? This is my space that I'm in right now, right? And what are we allowed to do? And so for me, what feels true, what feels empowered, is that I prioritize my debts. And so, while not writing any of them off, right? So for me, I am in deep relationship with Lady Saturn right now around the debts that have accrued during this initiation that I've been in with her, and holding that responsibility and intentionality, not only of repaying those debts, but holding that gratitude and appreciation for the ways that these things have supported me and that they did support me, that I accrued that debt during, right? So like my apartment, that while I may have outgrown it and I was ready to move on, I was still continuing to try to pay it, and it was time for me to let it go, and I've got this debt now from being evicted, right? That debt will get paid. I have every intention. I'm holding that in my body, and I had to weave through the weight of that, right? To be able to hold it with a space of honor. And my children were in a private school that was actually not serving either one of them, but I was continuing to pay for it because I felt like I needed to through the end of the school year. I felt like they needed that stability. I felt all these different things. I was afraid that it would be too difficult for them if I tried to switch them in the middle of the school year to a totally different structure. There were all these things that went into it, right? And there was this unfolding of circumstances that just happened to be, it was based on timing, actually, of a payment that I made, that they actually came back and said, you know what, it's really clear that this is a struggle. I had made the payment too late in the day, and it ended up not going through until after the weekend. And they were just like, you know what, this is actually clearly just a financial struggle though, and probably it's best if we don't continue this. But that meant that my kids basically got kicked out of school. And so in the 3D world, that was like super, super heavy for me. I mean, I'm sure you can imagine how heavy that was for me to navigate and really make me rethink, did I make a misstep here? Should I have just gone and gotten a fucking job? Should I have all my eggs in one basket? Am I doing the right thing here? I mean, that just threw me into a huge spiral, right? And looking back on it, it was the absolute best. I was wasting my money spending it there, not because this place isn't valuable and amazing and I have so much appreciation for them, but it wasn't meeting my children in the ways that they need to be met. And the school that they're in now, not only is it free for me, but they both fucking love it. And it's totally supporting them and nourishing them in amazing ways. And they are really not struggling with this new structure at all. It feels better for both of them. And so, what looks like this, really terrible thing actually might be moving us into a space that's much better. But I've been working really deeply with Lady Saturn on these debts that I have accrued, that I have every intention of paying. But another thing that I have allowed myself to make a priority for me, because I am specifically stepping into my gifts of service, and I have all my eggs in one basket right now. There is no other path forward for me other than receiving my financial abundance through stepping fully into my gifts, through shining that light in the world and touching others' souls and creating that value in the world, right? That is the only place that my income is coming from right now. That is the only place that feels in alignment. And it's not even, it's all I'm willing to do. It's the only thing that feels in alignment. And that means that continuing to invest in those things that I feel called to continue to cultivate this container is my number one priority when it comes to how I'm making money. Continuing to weave with how am I connecting to my clients? What is the message that I'm sharing? How am I working in integrity in my own self? How am I weaving at that template level in my own self? How am I navigating this in my own self, right? And who am I turning to for that support? And there is a space where I had made an agreement with one of my mentors before all of this fell apart for my biomancy diploma, where it was a monthly payment, and it came to a point where I could no longer make that payment. And so I have had to work with them on what that looks like moving forward. And I think the biggest thing when it comes to these debts is, what are your priorities? And are you in communication with them? Are you working with them at whatever levels you can to bring awareness to what you're able to do in this moment and what feels in alignment to you in this moment, and willing to take the consequences of and hold those consequences, not just shirk them, but hold those consequences and continue to weave with them as you move forward, right? Because some of this has been like, okay, well, some of my accounts have gone into collections, or, and my credit report has taken a huge hit as a result of this. And these are 3D world consequences that I am willing to take on as I move toward this full trust in what I'm moving toward and what I'm creating in the future, knowing that all of this can be retiled, that all of this is going to be taken care of, and that I am in integrity with my intentions on how I'm meeting these things, right? But the number one priority for me is that we are allowed to live a life that is thriving, that me and my children, that I am nourishing us first. We are number one, right? I take care of me and my children first. I make sure that we have the nourishment we need, that we are in the space that we are in that is in alignment for us with a safe roof over our heads right now. And that doesn't feel ideal in this space of this initiation. But I am continuing to allow the universe to guide me step by step through that process of re-anchoring every layer that I sense, every layer that I feel reflected to me around this space, right? I continue to cultivate and allow these to be my number one priorities. And that also means meeting us in our strategy, authority, and profile ways. So my daughter is a 3-line, I'm a 3-line, my mom is a 3-line, so we allow our resources to creatively support us in ways that we can have new experiences, in ways that we get to feel this sense of adventure and newness and new experiences, right? It also means that quality food is my number one priority, and I will not sacrifice that. So I allow my resources to creatively support us in having pastured meats and organic fruits and vegetables, and making sure that we are nourished in our body in these ways. And making sure that we have some creature comforts and luxuries. My youngest daughter is a Taurus, and so she's very into sensual. She's a 2-line Taurus, so she's all about being able to express herself and feel those sensual experiences. And they're both 5 lines as well. So I've got a 3-5 and a 2-5. And so it's like, where can you be in your power? And they're both here to have powerful relationships with money. So I also make sure that I allow them to explore their relationship with money. If I have any ability where I feel like I can put some money toward that, I allow that to happen ahead of repaying my debts, because I am supporting their financial story, their financial experience, and their exploration of it in the best ways that I can, right? And it means that yeah, that experience of thriving and living and exploring our lives, that comes first. The first debt that comes behind those, and doing what I can around, our survival, making sure that we are as comfortable as we can be as survival, and being able to move through this thriving space of our experience, right? And so, for me, that also means like anointing my body with oils and taking care of my hair and taking care of my nails, and especially as a Pisces, taking care of my feet and having some of these creature comforts, right? This is a priority. This is thriving. This is a priority for me above most of my debts, above all of my debts, right? This is number one. Not in an extravagant way, not in a way where I'm going out and blowing all my money, in ways that feel satisfactory for me, in ways that bring us these experiences according to what feels in alignment for my strategy and my authority, right? And then my number one debt is my mentors. That is the thing that I've got any extra money, it goes to that. I pay them what I can, when I can, towards supporting that, and they will be the ones that get paid first, right? They will be paid off first. Why? Because they are the ones that are helping to build this new world. They are the ones that are helping to bring others up into the light. They are the ones that have helped bring me into the light. So that is number one. And then right behind that comes my other debts, right? Right behind that, I work at a priority level with, I've got nominal credit card debt, and I've got a very low, loan on my car that's left like $1 or $2,000, and I've got some bigger debts. I've got an SBA loan that I had been living off of for a couple of years that, has a really nice low payment that I'm able to repay right now. And so I'm continuing to pay that. And then I've got these other debts that are a little bit bigger with the school and with my apartment complex, and I'm holding those, and I will be repaying those as money continues to flow through as I'm retiling this well, right? And in that same thread, I'll be rebuilding all of my credit, right? And so for me, these are the ways that feel best because I flow with money. I don't have a direct, rigid structure with it because that's not how I flow with money. That's not how I flow in the world. I flow based on results and how I feel, how it feels that it's serving us, whether or not I feel stressed, frustrated, or satisfied with the way that it's going, right? And so, this is part of what I know and feel that I am here to help others navigate and help them feel into in their lives as we are weaving in this space. The containers that I hold, I touch every level of returning to that origin space. So it's through relationships, it's through our vocation and soul purpose, it's through reclamation of our money, it's through intimacy, it's through, that inner world. It always begins in that inner world, right? It's through being able to navigate. And this is the skill that I show others during this process that they're able to take with them, that continues to nourish them, is that templating, how to work with all these various levels of reality and allow them to reflect to you, how to receive the guidance from them, how to bring that into your body to give it roots, and how to extract the gold from that and move forward in an empowered way. So I teach them how to alchemize their 3D world that they're experiencing now, how to alchemize it through the past, present, and future to rebuild a new future, right? And this is a skill that you cultivate in this alchemical cauldron container that you bring with you, that you get to continue to build upon. So you never have to. The intention is that you don't return to that 3-month container with me. Maybe we move through cycles where we need some additional support, where we feel called to have some additional support from a mentor. And so I offer for my initiates that have moved through that cauldron one-off containers that are like 1 month where I support them through this unraveling, and we've got 2 sessions within that month, and I continue to support them through that and create an expansion on their container. And in my oracular space, it's being able to understand and see the templating, see the shadow, see the magic, so that you can start to see even when you're in shadow, oh, this is actually reflecting to me where my magic is. Like, this is actually part of my gift that maybe it's coming out sideways right now, but this is part of my gift right now. It's actually a huge part of who I am and what I'm here to reclaim, right? And also through that oracular space, reclaiming, just bringing awareness to what are your gifts? What is your value in this world? What are you stepping into? What is your strategy? What is your internal authority? What does it look like when we're working from that space? What is your unique foundation and essence in this world, right? And all of these things you get to take with you. And the, beautiful feedback that I get from my clients from this oracular space is when I'm sharing these voice clips, I send my oracular messages through voice clips to them, and they save these and they continue to return to them months and months and months on as they feel called to re-explore these spaces at deeper levels, as they gain a deeper level of integration, and they're able to continue to pick up new wisdom and new insights and new perspectives from that new level. Because when you share from this oracular space, it's coded with wisdom that you are meant to continue. It grows with you, it evolves with you, right? And so, that's one of the deepest values that I hold for the people that I work with, is that I'm able to share from this space of embodied experience. I'm starting to get ants on the upper part of my body that have crawled up my body onto my arms. So, but I'm able to share from this space of my invisible gifts, of what I have cultivated, of what I've moved through my body, of what I have been cultivating and reclaiming in my own magic over these past several years. And that brings a depth of wisdom that continues to unfold and evolve for your unique path as well. And so, again, this isn't something that I have figured out, right? There is a foundational level of wisdom that I feel I've touched into around how we are here to navigate the reclamation of our power and resources as we move forward. And it's something that I just invite you to begin to explore in yourself and see how it resonates and what insights you gain around it. So, I hope this has been helpful. And, again, as I've said before, if you do have any questions about how I've navigated something or what's going on or an experience that I've had or anything, like, I'm here to share all of that. If you want to share with me what you're navigating, what you're struggling with right now, what you would like more information on, or I'm so here to receive that as well and hold space for that as well. So, I hope this has helped you and supported you in some way.